Okay.
All right. We have a full house here. My name is Jim Tamanto, and I have the pleasure of introducing Mario Romano, the Director of Engineering, one of the Directors of Engineering, based in London. And I have seen Mario on many Tech Talk Lives, as many of you probably have as well. We're here, he's going to talk about today the Unified JavaScript Api. When I asked Mario what was the most important thing to make sure that you knew about him, I'd seen his profile, but the number one thing is to defend his country and where he has come from. He said he is from Naples, and he wants to make sure that everyone knows that the pizza was invented there. And it breaks my heart. He says, not in New York. I'm a New Yorker, so he's breaking my heart, but not in New York or Chicago.
But also New York does a good pizza. It's not the same.
The other thing, the next thing was a bit more personal. He wanted to make sure that you knew that he still writes code.
Yeah, I know how to do it.
And we wound up finding out he did 313 commits last year in the public, and that's not to mention what's internally. I think he's got a 1-year-old son, so he's a new father. But most importantly, because I'm used to...
not sleeping.
Exactly. Most importantly, he's a real car guy. And real car guys, they have to own an Alpha in their lifetime. And I hear you had an Alpha GT.
Yes, I did.
And you had some time behind the wheel of a Ferrari. So
yeah. Yes, I did.
You write code fast, and maybe you drive the car fast.
Unfortunately, I don't own a Ferrari.
All right, so give it up for Mario.
Okay, thank you, guys. So I own some Bitcoins. Eventually, one day, they will become a Ferrari. We will see. So today, I'm here to talk about the Alfresco JavaScript Api. This is one of the part of our ADF framework. We don't talk a lot about this API. This, I think, has some potentiality. That is the reason why I'm here today to talk with you about this. That is one of the pillars of the ADF framework. So I am Mario Romano. During this year, I have done 3 video courses about Angular and Spring Boot. So I'm really passionate about code. I still write code. I cannot stop writing code. Even though my wife said that she would divorce if I keep writing code during the weekend. That's fine. So we don't have a lot of time, so we have a little bit hurry up because it's 30 minutes talk. So in case I start talking about other things, please remember me to go back in track. So the agenda is we will talk about what is the Alfresco JavaScript API, why you should be using it, and how to do it eventually in the backend and front-end applications. So as I say, the Alfresco JavaScript API, which is the things that we will talk today, is one of the 3 pillars of the ADF framework. We have the Angular 2 components, we have the JavaScript API, also the human generator to help you to generate in a faster way application on top of the ADF framework. This one, the JavaScript API, is a project by its own. So it has its own contribution, it has its own repository, has a completely different life from the other projects that are part of the ADF framework. So if you look at the ADF framework, the 3 pillars that I showed you before, the components, they have their own repository. The Alfresco JavaScript API has its own repository. The human generator has its own repository. I want to underline these things because often people ask me, but what is the Alfresco JavaScript API? Why I have to install it through NPM? Because it's a separate thing that has its life cycle. So what is it? It's an open source project. So we are open for contribution. You can get there, check our code, and eventually we will really appreciate contribution from the open source community. One of the reasons why you should be using it is because it unifies the login between the content and process. So wraps all the APIs of the process side, of the content side, and also in the last release of the governance services. It's also compatible with any JavaScript framework. So any JavaScript framework that you can think about, you can use the Alfresco JavaScript API. I'll show you some of them later on in the slide, if we have time. I hope so. This is a little bit an high architecture of the framework. So as I said, we have the process service, the governance service APIs, and the content service API, plus an authentication layers that covers all the REST API. So you don't need any more. I'm pretty sure many of you, if they have used the content and the process together, also the governance, they have found themselves writing some hack code to have authentication in a consistent authentication on the process and on the content. Using the Alfresco JavaScript API, you don't have to care about writing this code. We have done it for you, so you can move to the next step and concentrate yourself on the domain of your problem. As I said, you can use it for front-end clients, also for back-end development. This is the life cycle of this library. As all the ADF eases of the framework, we release it in beta, alpha, and the monthly release. So every time someone submits a pull request on our repository, we publish an alpha version. It goes through of course, it goes through our continuous integration system. So we check that all the unit tests are still passing, nothing is break from the backward compatibility, and then we publish on NPM so on the public NPM, you can go there and check what is the latest alpha and download it. Every week, which is the length of our internal sprint, we publish also a beta version. This beta version has more than just one commit, a single contribution from a person that can be from the community or internal contributors. It has more functionalities. So maybe it's a little bit more consistent, and maybe if you are in a rush that you want to not fix or something, you can use the beta. And every month, which is the length of our release, we do the normal release that we release following the semantic versions. These one are the steps that usually we go through. So we do the peer review system, we do unit testing, manual testing, automation testing, all the things to make sure that it's consistent. So why you should use it? By the way, yesterday I was at the Sky Bar in my hotel. They said that 5 minutes before, Cristiano Ronaldo was there. Now, I don't know if they told me this thing just to, I don't know, mock me, or if it was true as a thing. I was there. So let's use the Alfresco JavaScript API. Maybe you want to write something in Node.js. You want to write a new backend system with Node.js. You don't want to write in Java or, I don't know, any other technologies that we are using, TypeScript. You want to use your backend. You want to write your backend using a Node.js library. You can use our Alfresco JavaScript API because it's compatible with Node.js. Maybe you can't use Angular component. I'm not saying you don't like the Angular component because this thing is opinable. You can't use it because your project doesn't support Angular 2. Maybe you have a project in React, in Vue.js, or you have an old project in an old version of Angular. Maybe you're just using jQuery. In that case, you can use our Alfresco JavaScript API, still to get the value of wrapping all the calls of a single authentication system. Is a code that you don't need to maintain. So if something breaks in there, we will take care of fixing that thing for you. Or you maybe can do a contribution to community, and all the community will take advantage of these things. OK, so now everyone, I think, OK, I love it. I can do something with React, with Vue.js, whatever framework we are using, I'm going to use this library. And my question would be, are you sure you want to do this thing? Because the first thing that you need to understand, I understand if some of you can't do it because they are using other framework, and sometimes it's too complicated and go there and change the framework of an application that already exists. But if you want to create a new project from scratch, think carefully about it, because we have already done a lot of work creating the Angular components. So maybe before going there and create your own React component library, your own Vue.js component library, or any other framework, JavaScript framework, you want to create your components, check before our Angular components, because these components will save you time. And maybe you say, but I don't like your Angular component because I think I'm smarter, I can do it better. Fine, let's talk together. Let's see how to improve it. We are always happy to work with smart people. So if you know how to make our components better, let's work together to improve the components. Of course, it's different if you say, OK, but I have a long-standing project where I cannot put Angular inside. That is fine. Maybe you want to use Alfresco JavaScript Api to take some advantage from it. So now let's see some code. This one is an example of the Alfresco JavaScript API. It is an example about how to do authentication. In this case, we are just requiring the Alfresco JavaScript API. If any of you is familiar with the require or in general the NodeJs syntax, you will know that we are just importing this dependency inside our project in the case. And then we are creating a new instance of the Alfresco API object. And we are passing 3 parameters in this case. One is the host of the BPM, the host of the ECM platform, and a provider that tells to our library if we want to be authenticated in both places, or maybe you can pass only ECM there, be authenticated also in the ECM, or maybe you want to pass just BPM and be authenticated inside the BPM. The other thing that we do, of course, is a call to the login. And we have 2 callbacks. We are passing username and password. And we have 2 callbacks about a success of the login or eventually an error. So the Alfresco API, as I said, it wraps everything about content, governance, and process. In this case here, we have an example about how to make a call to the content system to retrieve a file, I suppose in this case, folder. File or folder depends from this node, what you will have at that node ID. And even in this case, the callback will return you pass the ID to the node API. It will return you eventually all the information about the node or an error in case it wasn't able to connect for any reason. The authentication was expired, or endpoint wrong, or the machine is down. In this other case, we are doing a call to the process service. And we are taking a list of all the tasks inside the process service. We pass and the object, which is a query in this case, is an object that contains a query to the process service, and it returns the list of all the tasks. So now, how you do it? So how do I integrate this thing inside my projects? Super easy. You just do npm install, eventually -save because you want to put this thing inside your package.json file, and the name of our library, Alfresco JavaScript API. And then the only line that you need is really import, in case you are using a JavaScript framework. Import the Alfresco API from, this one is the name of the package. And this is exactly what you need. You don't need anything else. You need this at the documentation. All the documentation of the Alfresco JavaScript API is on our repository. So you go on GitHub. I'll give you the link to the GitHub project at the end of the talk. It's in a slide. You can download them later on the slides and go to the project. And so, because we often say that the Alfresco JavaScript API is compatible with every framework, but we never show that actually it's compatible with every framework. We just say this. I decided to go through an experiment and try it in Node.js. So the only thing that you need to do in this case is to init a new project in any given folder where you want to create a project about npm, then install, as I said, the Alfresco JavaScript API. In this case, I'm using VI. You can use any editor you prefer. And I'm editing in the index.js file. And then I start with Node index.js file. Let me show you some code. OK. So this one is the file, where in here what I do is requiring, in this case because it's Node.js, requiring the Alfresco JavaScript API, doing the login, as we have seen in the previous slide. I do the authentication with the username and password. Inside the callback, I have a console log. Also, I'm doing a call to activity to get the list of tasks. So given the callback, I know that I'm logged in there, and I can retrieve the list of the tasks from the process service. Let's see if we can also run this code. Okay. Eventually it will work. The connection is a little bit slow, so it takes a while. As you can see here, this one is the console log that you have seen before inside the editor. And here we have the console log where we say that we have been authenticated with the two tickets. One is from the process service, and the other one is from the content service. And this shows you that we are dealing with these two authentication of these two systems. Now there is a little caveat in this thing. You need to have the same username and password in both systems, or you have LDAP that is syncing your username and password between the content and the process for now. As you can see here, we have the log with the entire list of tasks. Then I decided also to try another framework, React. How many of you use React? If any of you use React. We have some people are using, good. So I don't know how to use React. So what I did is to use a generator. So this one is a project that you can find on NPM, is a scaffolder. So I have installed my scaffolder that what it does gives me some command to create a project, a scaffolder project. So I create the project with the command create React app. I pass the name of my app, the version because I wanted to use TypeScript, I think was in this case. And then again, I installed the Alfresco JavaScript Api. Then of course I did some change inside the code. I'll show you what is the code that I hacked in that case. There we go. So in this case, again, I do the authentication in the constructor of my React application, and then the import first of all. Then I do the authentication. I create an object here to pass the state to the template, and then I did the login when the render was completed. And then inside the login, I do two calls. One is to get all the tasks, another one is to get all the files. Exactly the same code that we have seen before, just is running inside React. And then I'm passing this object to the template. I'm not a React expert. There is somewhere, yeah, this thing that does the mapping of your JavaScript object with the template, bounds the JavaScript to HTML. So you have JavaScript and HTML together. And then here I print the list. I go through the map. I print the list of all the ID and the name of the task. And I do the same thing, essentially the same things for files. Now, if I run this application, which I have somewhere here, npm start. I have to go. So you see here that I have all the tasks and files from my process and content service. And from there, of course, then it's up to you what you want to do with the calls that you can do with the content and process. You can create your components. You can create your application. You maybe are not interested in creating components. You just want to build an application. But the Alfresco JavaScript Api offers you an object-oriented way to access to the APIs. And then let me stop this application because the next one will not run. Yep. And then I tried Vue.js. How many of you use Vue.js? One? OK. Yeah, not many people use Vue.js, but it's a framework that is an emerging framework that is getting some traction. I don't know where we go, if we eventually will be adopted by a lot of people. The same thing, again, I don't know how to use Vue.js. So what I did in this case is getting another CLI, a scaffolder project from NPM, install it, and then installing the Alfresco JavaScript Api, and do npm start. The code that you will see now is pretty much the same. That we have seen before. It just changed the way that the templates put together the HTML and the JavaScript. Vue.js. So in Vue.js, you have this syntax here. There is the template, then you have the JavaScript. You have the script tag where you can put your JavaScript. I'm importing the dependency here. And then they have this data method, which contains all the objects that will be sent to the template, I think. And then you have a methods field where you can put all the methods that you will be calling. And then they have this creator that is a callback that gets called when starts the page. Inside the callback of the start, I do the login as before. And then I call the two methods that I have defined inside the methods block. Again, first time in my life that I write things in Vue.js. npm start also in this case. Eventually it will run. And then same application before, different syntax, different frameworks, same Alfresco JavaScript API, same backend. I'm getting the same results, just rendered with another framework. And then, last but not least, we have Angular. Okay, now I want to see more hands, possibly. How many of you use Angular? Ah, nice. Okay, thanks. In this case, same things. I don't know how to use Angular. I know some. You install the Angular CLI, and then you create your project with the command of the Angular CLI. I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with the Angular CLI. I do npm install of the Alfresco JavaScript API inside my Angular project. To be honest, I didn't put in my slide this thing of Angular because I thought, OK, I'm pretty sure everyone will know how to do these things because they are using ADF, they are using the framework. Yesterday, I had some conversation with some people that were saying, OK, but it's too complicated to use Angular. You have to use the template, then you have to create a service, a component. I don't want to spend my life doing these crazy things with this framework. And I think there is, maybe I can show that you can do just one call to the Alfresco JavaScript API, and you will get exactly what you need. So even in this case, this one is the only class inside my application. It's just a component. I don't have any directive. I don't have any service. It's a component. Inside the component, inside the constructor, I have the login. I do this call to the login. Then in the callback, I call the task and the files. And then I pass these two objects to the HTML. And I render through the ng4 here. I render the two objects, the task object and the file object. And again, oh, this one is no, sorry. Let's start. And again, in this case, different template, different framework, same backend, same Alfresco JavaScript API. We get the list of the files and the tasks. From here, you can create any component that we didn't create because we didn't thought about it, or we didn't have the time to create it. So now you know how to use the Alfresco JavaScript API, how to bring it inside your component. It's up to you how to create any component you need for your application. Even if you download the Angular generator, the ADF generator to create your application, you can use the same syntax to create your own component. I know, display the list of the files in different way, the list of tasks in a different way that we are not showing, and possibly contribute back to the community, to the ADF framework, and submit a component to our framework. So how to get involved with the ADF in general and the Alfresco JavaScript API? Just do it. So you go on the repository. We have a GitHub channel, and we have our two repositories, one of of the Alfresco JavaScript API and one of all the Angular components. In this GitHub channel, there are all the developers from the community, from Alfresco, that pretty much 24 hours on 24 hours, they are there answering questions. Yeah, questions, if there are any.
Okay, this is a great time to ask Mario to do something maybe that he doesn't want to do, or that is going to be very difficult, because someone tells me that you really want one of those Order of the Bee coffee mugs that changes the color. With
Yes, I would like to have it. But they told me that this year there are no mugs.
So I was told that the coffee mug will come to you if there's a hard question.
Okay,
that,
please ask
you
hard
are
questions.
you are going to change in the product right away.
Okay. Question there.
One second. We'll get this to you.
So I was wondering if the JavaScript API supports TypeScript typings.
Yeah, we have a typing file where we have all the objects defined there, so you can use it with TypeScript. We use with TypeScript when we write our Angular 2 code is TypeScript, so we need the thing and is inside the library.
Yeah, I have another question about JavaScript API. How does it compare to the API and event gateway? Is it going to provide the same?
The Java API?
Yes.
Is not exactly the same, because the Alfresco JavaScript API is built on top of the REST layer. So we are wrapping all the REST calls, which they, if you have used the REST layer of the content, you may know that the kind of response that you get from the REST layer are a little bit different in some cases from Java SDK. So they are not the same things of the Java SDK. They don't offer the same.
Yeah, but is it going to provide the same functionality?
No, it wants only offer wrapper around the REST layer.
Okay, thank you.
But if people want to have also more complicated functionalities on top of it, my advice would be do it inside your framework. But I think there is space to have this conversation. If we see really the need of having more complex functionalities in there, let's have this kind of conversation and let's see, I don't know, maybe there is another project that we can create, or maybe we can add more functionalities in there. We are open to have this kind of conversation. Until now, the kind of use that we have seen from people was just the need of wrapping the REST layer. It is what we did.
Are there any more questions? Oh, come on. Oh.
Hey, Mario, when are you going to incorporate the microservice strategy into the API? John talked this morning about it.
Microservices and Alfresco JavaScript API. The thing is, eventually one day we will have a gateway in front all our architecture. If you have seen the diagram, there is a gateway. On this gateway is the one that you will be having access. Even your API, your client, we know only what is the address of the gateway. Through the gateway, then you will have behind this gateway all the things that you need, all the microservices, and all the other sort of things. Does this answer to your question?
Hi, Mario. I have a question. So do you generate the API with some kind of Swagger definition code generator, or do you maintain it by hand?
So we auto-generate it from the definition of the REST API layer. We have done some work on top of it, like the layer to authenticate of the authentication, to unify the authentication. We have added the TypeScript that was missing. Eventually, we fix some things from the auto-generated code, things like how these things get imported inside the framework, or how the classes of the Alfresco JavaScript API get imported to make them compatible with all the frameworks.
And we probably have time for one more question.
Hi, Mario. Thanks. Thanks for that presentation. It's quite interesting to see how the unified API works with different technologies. My question to you would be, what advice do you have for those? I know right now we use a lot of share. There's two aspects of current solutions that exist. One is specific to share customization, which is share specific. But there's a lot of APIs and scripts and rules that have been created under that. Moving forward, can we reuse that when we go into Angular? This is not just share-specific customizations, but those scripts and rules that have been written around the content services. Is that a strategy where we can kind of reuse those JavaScripts that have been written in the current solution and tie into the unified JavaScript API and use ADF components? Does that make sense? It's just kind of architectural thing that.
Are you talking about front-end JavaScript or back-end JavaScript?
It's the content JavaScripts that we write on the CS, and then we expose it into shared customization.
Web scripts?
Web scripts are REST-based, so I know we can reuse that.
Yeah, web script you can.
But there are rules around like folder rules and folder scripts and things like that that go around content services. Do you have to rewrite all that?
To be honest, it's not really the aim that has the Alfresco JavaScript API. As I said, the Alfresco JavaScript API, the objective is to wrap the REST API layer, so all the version of the API that we have now. We never thought about this kind of use with, I don't know, with more legacy code that you may have inside your application. I don't know, if there is again,
I'm just thinking if there's any strategy around that where we
can have a conversation about it in the community on ADF and in the JavaScript GitHub project, and see if there is more people that are asking for this kind of functionalities, understand exactly what is the use case, what is the best way to address it. In case, yes, we could definitely do it. So the primary things is, if it's not a specific need of just one person from the community, for sure there is space to talk about it and do improvements to every tool that we have inside the ADF framework.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Mario. Thank you all. Please vote on the exit. I know there's only one box that you have to know anything about, but yay or nay on the presentation will really help. Thank you.
Thanks,